How many D&D villains have you run across that are simply one-dimensional and predictable? GameMasters here, and today we're diving deep into the art of crafting a morally ambiguous villain that your players won't just fight, but might even sympathize with, fear, and maybe even agree with. I'm also going to provide to you a cheat sheet slash kind of tracking sheet of sorts that you can reference to help create the best possible villain that you can. And I'll leave a link to that down below in the description. But before we can flesh out our best possible D&D villain, and I should actually kind of pause here for a moment to say that everything that we're about to go over applies to pretty much any tabletop role-playing game out there. Whether you're deep in the grim darkness of Mortborg, trudging through the dungeons of Shadowdark, or even navigating Galorian in Pathfinder, or even cracking jokes with the mutant reptiles in the old-school Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles RPG, this villain-building approach, it's going to work across all of those. Okay, so before we start constructing our complex and compelling villain, let's talk about what we're moving away from. You've seen that stereotypical evil villain 1,000 times. Maybe he's wearing a skull helmet, sits on a throne of bones, speaks in an ominous, gravelly voice, and his grand plan is to take over the world. Well, why? Because he's evil, and that's it. This evil overlord archetype is it's like ordering plain toast at a 5-star restaurant. Sure, it technically works, but it's bland, it's forgettable, and it does nothing to excite the imagination. You'll find versions of this villain scattered throughout popular culture. Take a look at Steppenwolf from Justice League, and I'm talking about the movie here, not the comic book, but in the movie, he's just a generic alien warlord doing generic evil things. Meleketh from Thor the Dark World. His entire goal was darkness. That's it. Or even Kronos in Percy Jackson, who just kind of wakes up evil and wants to end the world because reasons. Even horror movies aren't immune. Look at the Bye-Bye Man or Slender Man. These bad guys, these villains, they are scary in design, but they lack any real depth or motivation for that matter. They're evil just because the script needs something spooky. Contrast that with Michael Myers, Candyman, or Jason Voorhees, even Jason Voorhees' mom, or even Freddy Krueger. These are all villains that have backstories, motives, and terrifying charisma. They make us uneasy because there's something real behind that nightmare. In your tabletop game, if the villain is nothing more than a combat stat block with a deep voice and an evil laugh, players are going to sniff out that trope pretty quickly. And what's worse, it just boils down to just another encounter. But I want to flip that script. Just as the players have carefully crafted their character's backstory, a good villain also should have motivations and a backstory. Start by asking why they're doing what it is they're doing. Maybe your villain was once a hero whose ideals were shattered. Maybe they lost everything due to the ruling order, the pecking order, and now seek to dismantle that very system that they see as being corrupt. The goal is to create logic behind the madness. Better yet, look at what has defined one of the heroes in our own popular culture. We'll look at Luke Skywalker, for example. And by the way, I'm only going to limit it to the original trilogy here. So I could easily go on a rant about the sequel trilogy or even the prequel trilogy, but that's really a video for another time. But we're going to look at Luke from episodes 4, 5, and 6. We learn that he grew up without his mom and dad. In fact, he never knew his mom, and only later finds out that, spoiler guys, that Darth Vader is his father. I know. Ooh. And if that isn't bad enough, his own dad hacks his hand off. And that alone would be a terrific recipe for turning evil. Yet he doesn't. Yes, Luke is tempted when Vader threatens to go after his sister, then ultimately allows himself to calm his mind and become the hero that saves the day and the galaxy. But as we mentioned in the last chapter, I want to flip the script. Consider all of that backstory to what could have happened should Luke have not calmed his mind and ultimately dipped into the dark side and became Darth Starkiller, the villain. Now, talk about a complex backstory. You want to give your D&D villain relatable traits and struggles that even the players might have to deal with. Establish questions for the backstory, but have answers as details are discovered. What keeps your villain awake at night? What humanizes them? Or if they're not human, what makes them feel real? A monster who collects children's drawings and puts them up on a cavern wall. A lich who still talks to the preserved corpse of their spouse. That's the kind of detail that lingers in your players' minds once they discover it. But what's more, it also establishes a small connection and might give them doubt as to your villain's true intentions. You'll want to present ethical dilemmas. Is the villain's goal really evil, or is it just the method of obtaining that goal that seems to be evil? Maybe they want to end the 1,000-year dragon war by sending minions out to steal by any means necessary all of the orbs of dragon kind. Could the ends justify the means? And this is what lets your players squirm a little. And if you really want your players to squirm, bake into the villain's backstory a connection directly to them. Perhaps your villain is a former mentor to one of the party members, or a second sibling that felt they got all of mom and dad's attention, or a rival adventurer who once adventured with the party. That hits differently. Your players will lean in because they have a connection, a direct connection to your bad guy. All the better if you can craft that direct connection to all of the players, as that will really have them all invested. Keep in mind that not every encounter with the villain needs to devolve into combat. You'll want to craft up and develop authentic dynamic interactions. Let there be parlay, talk to each other. Let there be compromise. Create tense moments where blades stay sheathed, but just barely. A great example of this can be seen in The Walking Dead, the comic book version. Well, and I guess kind of to an extent the TV series. But in the comics, Negan is a hardcore villain. He means bad news. But in many interactions with the heroes, all he does is simply talk. He establishes his authority. He may bang up a few heads, but for the most part, he comes across as a very ambiguous villain. As you read the comic, you really are forced to ask yourself, is Negan really a bad guy? I mean, if the comic had started off from his point of view, would we have seen Rick and his group as the villains? Dynamic interactions help to establish that morally gray question, is this guy really a bad guy? And then on top of that, you're going to add layers of complexity. Let the relationships evolve. Today's villain might become tomorrow's uneasy ally. Maybe they even save the party, but just as Negan did, it's likely only to serve their own ends. And keep that line between enemy and ally just blurry enough, and that can give your players pause, which further adds to a great setup for a villain. What you are doing here is challenging the player's moral compass, because in my view, the best villain doesn't just challenge the party's hit points, they challenge their beliefs. If your players begin asking, are we the bad guys? Then you are definitely heading in the right direction. Role-playing gold is struck when you can get the paladin to question their oath, when you can get the party's rogue to agree with the villain's methods. Let these inner conflicts grow, and you'll find the scenes you all create between the villain and party are ones that everyone is going to remember years later. The join me moments, the I let you live, so now we're even moments, the we're not so different, you and I monologue. Those aren't movie cliches. They're classic examples of speaking to the audience, or in this case to your players, that the villain is just like them, that the villain has their own struggles and complications, and this is where you want to start developing your villain's plan. A villain with a plan is far more threatening than one that simply shows up just to cause chaos. By all means, keep that plan hidden and private all unto your villain, or share it with the players, or better yet, let the players attempt to predict the next move and then surprise them. There are many examples that we can cite where the villain ties up the hero and explains all of their motivations for total world domination. Many of the James Bond movies do this. And while there is a certain amount of glee that we as the viewing audience gets from seeing all things revealed, doing this with the players can be hit or miss. But what you can do is provide a touch of subterfuge. Consider this. The players were tasked with saving a town from an evil adult red dragon. They prepared, they hired more hands to help infiltrate the dragon's lair, they even gathered up gold as a tribute. They are marching towards the dragon's mountain, only half a mile from it now, and watch as the dragon leaves its perch from atop that mountain and begins flying 6,000 feet above them, so they can't even hit it. But it's moving towards the town. Panicked, they turn their horses around and try to hurry back to the town before it's too late, but they know that they have no hope in hell in getting back in time. Once they get there, they find that the dragon is dead at the town's entrance, with our main villain having been the one that saved the day. This was subterfuge, and by him taking down the dragon, it begins to have the town and the hired hands question the character's abilities and intentions. Did they take the entire town's strongest away purposely so that the dragon could destroy it? Well, thank goodness that other lone adventurer showed up to save the day. And with that, your villain's goal has become very clear, because the players know what's the truth. But what's more, they also know that this is one badass if he can take down an adult red dragon single-handedly. At this point, we've not just flipped the script on what makes a good villain, we've flat out burned it to the ground. A well-crafted villain isn't just a narrative obstacle. They aren't there just for sake of being evil and needing an inflated MacGuffin just to be a wall for the players to go up against at some point down the line. A good villain is a mirror. A good villain is a force that reflects your players' ideals, fears, and decisions. They give reason for your players to ask, are we in the right? When players start debating morality, even questioning loyalty, or even sympathizing with the enemy, you have succeeded. You've created a living, breathing character, one that is more than just a stat block on a sheet of paper and a menacing monologue. This has become a villain that changes the overall tone of your game. It raises the stakes of every decision, and ultimately, when the players have defeated that villain, it will have made that victory earned. Now, I have a question for both the DM and the player, but first, I want to thank everyone for watching today's video. If you got anything out of it, I only ask that you give the video a thumbs up, as that appeases that almighty YouTube God. I also want to thank all of my channel supporters and Patreon members, as their contributions to the channel made it so that I didn't need to take on a sponsored ad for today's video, and for that, I cannot thank them enough. If you would like to check out becoming a Patreon or channel supporter, I'll leave a link down below me here, my little talking box, as well as down in the description. And I've posted the link to my villain cheat sheet over on my Patreon. There's a link to the description down there below as well, but it is free to all members, so be sure to head over there and check it out. I'd also like to invite everyone to join my GameMasters Discord, as we've got lots of fun conversations that's all about all sorts of tabletop role-playing games. Again, I'll leave the link to that down below in the description as well. Villains. When done right, a villain becomes more than just a part of your campaign. They can become the entire reason that your players keep showing up at your table to see what happens next. Don't be afraid to let your villain evolve. Let them grow alongside the party. Let them win a few rounds. Let them bleed. Let them love. Let them fail. Or at least let it appear that they have failed. A villain that is alive in the world becomes more than just a one-dimensional thing. They become a fully immersive part of the story being told. Let your villain become unpredictable, because at the end of the day, a great villain doesn't just make your story more exciting. They make your players better storytellers too. Here is your homework. Dungeon Masters, what drives your villain? What scar in their past still hasn't healed? What can you do to flesh out their backstory? Players, if you ran across a villain that made a compelling argument, one that aligned with your character's beliefs, would you follow them? What if it meant turning against your party? Let me know your answers down in the comments, and until next our paths cross. Actually, we talked a little bit about a red dragon in today's video. If you'd like to see how to really flesh out a red dragon, and I mean really get into its psyche, check this video out next, because who knows, perhaps the red dragon was the main villain all along.